Hello. So I was wanting to talk about the firmament, um and specifically how we all each have our own personal firmament. And if you don't know what the firmament is, it is the enclosure around the earth. The Some people think of it as a dome, others think of it as a membrane. No one knows what it really is, but even in the even in the ball Earth model and all of that stuff, if you go off that, and if you pay attention to what some people in NASA have said, they're like, we can't go past. Um, the Earth is in a closed system, and we can't go past a certain point. And there's like a radiation Van Allen radiation belt, and they don't. I don't know how they backpedal on some of that and explain how they supposedly went to the moon and all that shit, but whatever. That is beyond the point of this video. But the firmament, this idea there's a firmament, if you're familiar with that, I kind of was thinking that we have our own personal firmaments. And a while back, years back, there were videos made by Enslaved by No Media and Jason Maggard, and I think a lot of those videos were taken down or something. The channels were taken down and then brought back. I don't know what the deal with all that was. I think a lot of this information is missing now, but um, they explained how your line of sight is only about, depending upon where you're at, like the elevation you're at and the obstructions and things in the way of the horizon, your line of sight is about 3 to 9 miles out completely. And even in these videos, he talked about a little bit like the firmament is your line of sight. I'm in agreement with this. At least one of them is. Like the firmaments are like different layers, I think. But one of the big shells of the reality is like your own personal line of sight, because it's kind of like, again, if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? If there's things happening outside of your own reality bubble, is it really happening, or is it now? Think of your reality bubble as like the screen, as like those what do you call it? Those smart screens I was talking about in a few videos back. How those you could kind of view the reality firmament edge and anything within that bubble as being like smart pixels bringing in information into the reality that's in your reality. And then basically that bubble is your whole entire aura. Um, you got we know about like the aura around us, and you can see it with Kirlian photography, and everybody knows about the aura. But yeah, anyway, I'm saying like you as a quantum creator being like a as you create, so you think, so it is what you think or whatever. The reality we create, it's shared. It's like a shared reality. Say, each individual is a receiver and transmitter, but like and not even people, but just life in general. But it all helps reinforce what the reality is, or how it's perceived. There's probably multiple layers of perceiving it, but yeah, I think it's kind of like that. The sky was the original screen, basically, and I guess mirrors and and black mirrors, and then like the technology, the TVs and the screens that we use, well, even like the radios and any piece of these receiver transmitter technologies that we're using are like instruments that amplify our perceived distance, because they basically the transmission, to me, it seems like however far out your thoughts go and then bounce back off the firmament and reverberate and make like a feedback loop. Um, well, your line of sight being 3 to 9 miles out is basically the feedback loop on your sight, on like what you can see. And then the other senses have their own line of like their own. It's like those are separate reality bubbles and they all converge into one. But then every individual life form has this. They all have their own influence on the reality, and their own aura in their line of perceptions have they have basically their own area that they affect around what you physically see. But I wonder, like, are the five senses just five different like wavelengths we're perceiving, basically? Like, is there more that you could perceive? Is there other senses, like maybe plants and animals have other senses we're not even aware of, and then they're able to perceive on these other wavelengths, like radio transmitter, and just dial to a different frequency? All really interesting. And I guess I'll add to this too. Like, I notice how civilization, it has its own frequency surrounding it, like a resonating bubble, like a wall of sound that's keeping things out, probably. And it's also just enforcing its influence upon that area, keeping out the other influences, keeping things from exiting that bubble, keeping things from coming in. But this wall of sound, a lot of it comes from the roads, the major highways. I mean, I'm sure you hear it on the video. I'm right next to this busy road, and it's just all day nonstop, that sound of the tires against the pavement emitting that frequency. And it's like this wall of energy. I think that's one thing to do with why they want to build like these mega highways over ancient structures, ancient burial grounds, ancient stuff that's buried. And they say bury stuff under a crossroads, in order to like nullify the energy of it, like old contracts that you want to nullify and stuff. In magic, I guess that's what they do, because the crossroads just like the energy nullifies, I guess. But anyways, that's a long side rail. But these energies coming in, it affects the reality, basically. So yeah, really, just been wondering how much of an effect and influence everything has on the reality. Like, how much different would it be if you were somewhere where within the 3 to 9 miles around you there was no other person, like not a single other human being? How would that change the perception of your reality, especially knowing this? Like, in like the individual, the capabilities of their thoughts and how powerful their mind is probably has something to do with it. But also, I wanted to add, and I think I've maybe mentioned this before in some other video, but like the millionaires, the mega billionaires, and the super rich elitist types in like the tops of these towers, where what do they call that, like the penthouse suite or whatever, like the very top of the tower where they're at. Well, they're at the top, where the higher up you go, the greater your sphere of influence is, because if you go up higher, you can see more. So clearly, your vibration, thought energy you're putting out, it's going out farther into the world, and so your influence is going out farther. And money is a manifestation of power, and so these people have a lot of money, they have a lot of power, they have a lot of influence and energy that they're exchanging. But being up that high in the tower, kind of like the wizard in the tower as well, it's the same thing. Like, the tower itself is like a gigantic wand. It's like a gigantic transmitter and receiver. But being up in the tower, which they're also, a lot of these towers are harnessing free energy. electricity, atmospheric electricity. But anyway, those are what's probably the real trade, the real World Trade Center, the real trade, the real energy, the real currency is like the electric current, and how much energy that they can gather in all these towers is like it's their wealth. That's the real wealth, right? Well, anyway, um, where was I going with this? At the um, tops of these towers, their influence is more. Well, you're closer to the firmament being up that high. So I think the firmament. Some say it's water, and water is a current transmitter receiver. I think it's something that's probably kind of super conductive, since the higher up you go, the higher, more charge you can pick up, like the more energy you can pick up. Um, and since you're up that high, it's probably like a web, like a super web, like I don't know, like the internet basically, like a super Ethernet. Yeah, the ether. That now I don't know. I guess water is in the air and water is above, because a lot of people correspond water with ether, and the etheric plane and the mental plane with being with air, and so obviously there's a difference because um, the air or the mental plane is your thoughts aren't just like immediately on the same frequency as like the internet is. Like your thoughts don't just completely transmit over. Um, so they are two different planes. But like then I guess the airwaves. What's that? Is that the ether? Is it the air? Because, or is it the water? Or is it the air? Because the radio frequencies are dialing, and maybe your mental thought frequencies are just another tune on the dial somewhere that they haven't figured out, or it's been omitted. Um, Kind of like how you can pick up spirits on some of these things, allegedly. But well, I mean, let's say allegedly, but I mean, I believe it. Like, it isn't hard to really imagine, right? And make sense. But I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that we have like this bubble. So there is like a greater bubble around in the outside known Earth, but even that information is kind of being pulled into your own bubble. And like, I think depending on the strength of your own influence, your own bubble, you can alter that and change that. And then the thing that most people do, first thing, to altering it, like if we're talking about like really altering the reality around them, like hardcore, would be like to become rich, and get a lot of money, because then they can acquire more things or services, or they can have much more influence upon everything around them with the money. But a lot of people just, that's it. Like, that's as far as they take it, I think. Other people have different interests, different pursuits other than the money. But yeah, like the really, really most powerful people, like the ones that people talk about running the economy and shit, the ones that are like, oh, they don't need money, they can just print the money. Why the fuck would they care about money? Well, they probably are on like 10,000 levels beyond the monetary realm, where they're, I don't know. But at this point, I guess I'm rambling again. But I was just trying to think if there was anything else I should mention. Basically, in psychology, I will say this, in German psychology, or I guess German, because the words and I can't remember the psychologists that came up with it, but the names of them are in German, and I'm gonna mess them up and butcher them. I don't remember the names completely, but basically there's 3 spheres of reality, or what would be called, in psychological terms, they say something different, but essentially the same thing, where you have your own mental, like your own self and your own thoughts and that's your own influence, your own imagination. But then around that, there's the society's influence and mental reality. Like, for instance, like, you can't really go walk outside naked, like in public, in the city, in the town. Like, they would probably arrest you, right? So that's like kind of like a reality rule upon that level, on the society level. But then there's like an even greater society, or there's not society, there's an even greater reality bubble, which is basically nature, and it rules all of just the principles of life and everything, and that's the most powerful influence, and that's where like the like, in nature, you're outside in the middle of the woods in nature, you probably could go walk around naked, it'd be fine, but as long as it's not cold or something, but um, so there's different, you know, rules to the reality, and but basically, if you want to go get off the frequency that this whole societal bubble is on, which is very sick right now, obviously, for the most part. Um, you go into nature, get far away from it. Well, I noticed that the other day because I did it, and that's when I noticed, like, I haven't gotten far away enough yet from, like, the highways where I hear the sound. I can still hear those cars, so I gotta get way out there. Because it's like, it helps you fucking unplug. It's like you're unplugging from the matrix. You unplug from that layer of reality, and then you're automatically plugged into the nature one because that one was already always there. It's like the greater reality bubble around you. It's like a level above, a level up, instead of going down into simulation, because society is like a simulation of the natural order. It isn't the natural order. It's the laws of man. They somewhat try to replicate the natural order, but it isn't completely in tune with it. Anyway, I think that's all I'll really say about that, except for I do think that that's one thing about this is you really do have the power to change your own immediate reality around you, and that I think that we underestimate that our ability to change it as much. Like, even something as simple as just going out and picking up trash you see around you is going to help the reality. Um, so, oh hey, there's a little oh, what it is? It's a deer or something out there. A little tiny thing. If it's a deer, it's cute. Well, oh, is it a dog? I think it's a dog. Anyway, I guess I'm gonna go. I can't really see it on the camera, show you guys on the camera, but I'm gonna head out. I'll see you later.